Welcome to the assembly guide for the K2X Pedals Kit from Najam Simtec. In the kit, you will find a 30mm aluminum profile, a 20mm aluminum profile, a USB cable, an electronics board, the two load cells, the elastomers and springs, two pedal faces, two stud bolts, the throttle lever and mounting plate, the side plates for the throttle, and the throttle fasteners. On the other side, we have the brake lever and mounting plate, the side plates for the brake, and the brake pedal fasteners, which contain these long hexagonal nuts. And finally, a bag with the linkages, washers, and nuts. For the assembly, we need a 10mm spanner, a 5mm Allen key, a 3mm Allen key, a small Phillips head screwdriver, and a metric scale. For the brake pedal assembly, we need the parts displayed, the 30mm aluminum profile, and the bag with the brake pedal fasteners. From the washers and nuts bag, we need one ball joint, 6 steel washers, 2 large plastic washers, 2 small plastic washers, 2 black plastic washers, 3 M6 nuts, 3 large T-slot nuts, and 2 M5 T-slot nuts. In the fasteners bag, we have two types of M6 bolts. For the first step, we need the 22mm bolt and the round 15mm standoff. These will form the pivots for the pedal arms. We begin by inspecting which side of the 15mm standoff goes easily in the brass bushings. Due to the tight tolerances, only one side will go in easily. Insert the 22mm screw from that side, screw it in, and repeat the process for the other side. Put a steel washer on top and screw on the large T-slot nuts a few threads. The following steps are important for the correct pedal geometry, so please follow the instructions carefully. Slide the pivot assembly into the aluminum profile from one end, ball side first. Align the bottom face of the slot nut with the end face of the aluminum profile and fasten tightly. Repeat the process for the opposite side, but leave it finger tight. This forms the bottom of the pedal arm and should look like this. Next, we slide a washer on the ball joint and screw on the T-slot nuts a few threads. Slide it into the profile like so and measure the distance from the top face of the nut to the top face of the pedal arm and adjust this position to exactly 126 millimeters. Tighten the M6 nut on the ball joint in this position securely. Now we assemble the main structure using the 16mm M6 bolts. The flange side of the brass bushing indicates the inner side of the structure plate. Fasten the round and hexagonal standoffs in the positions shown. Now take the load cell and run the wires through it carefully. Do not pull or twist these wires hard. Place the load cell in the assembly with the wire side down. Place the mounting plate in the rear cutout with this round feature facing backwards. Now carefully place the other side structure plate, aligning the pivot, load cell and mounting plate. Start fastening the bolts on this side. Use a flat working surface to ensure that the bottom side of the side plates are parallel. Fasten all screws tightly. Now we can tighten the pivot, which we previously left finger tight. Insert two M16 screws in the positions shown, one on each side with the small plastic washer on the outside. Screw on the M6 nuts and fasten. Do not over tighten as this may squeeze the white washer. Mount the pedal face next as shown. The vertical position of the pedal faces is undefined. For the next step, we need the small spring and the brake lever. Have two 16mm bolts and the round standoff on standby. Start by placing the spring in the cavity and bring the part into the assembly as shown. Press the spring to place it behind the round standoff. Align the two top slots on the brake lever with the M16 bolts. Now hold it in place and bring in the round standoff. Insert the screws and fasten tightly. The part should move freely, held in position only by the spring. When inspecting from the bottom, make sure that the load cell wires are not in the way and these two surfaces sit flat. For the final step, we insert the stud bolt like so, place two elastomers, then the plastic cup, one steel washer, one small plastic washer, and screw on the M6 nut, exposing about 5mm of the bolt. Now screw the bolt into the ball joint. To fasten properly, first tighten the nut against the ball joint with your fingers. Hold the bolt using the Allen key and tighten the nut clockwise. To loosen, repeat the process in the opposite manner. Please note that for the correct functionality of the brake pedal, do not place the elastomers in any preload. For brake pedal configurations and elastomer loadings, please visit the setup page on our website. For the throttle pedal assembly, we need the parts displayed, the 20mm aluminum profile, and the bag with the throttle pedal fasteners. From the washers and nuts bag, we need one ball joint, 3 steel washers, 2 large plastic washers, 2 black plastic washers, 1 thin M6 nut, 1 M6 self-locking nut, 3 M6 T-slot nuts, and 4 M5 square nuts. We repeat the pivot assembly process using the 22mm M6 bolts and the 15mm standoffs as we did for the brake pedal. again leaving one side finger tied. Here we use the M6 T-slot nuts instead of the larger ones used previously. The bottom of the pedal arm should look like this. We repeat the ball joint assembly using the M6 T-slot nuts as before, but please note that this time we set this to 128 millimeters. Tighten the M6 nut on the ball joint in this position securely and measure again to verify. Next, we assemble the main structure using the 16mm M6 bolts. The flange side of the brass bushing indicates the inner side of the side plate. Follow the assembly process using the 30mm round standoffs as shown. Place the mounting plate in the rear cutout with the round feature facing backwards. Carefully place the other side plate aligning the pivot and the mounting plate. Start fastening the bolts on this side. Use a flat working surface to ensure that the bottom side of the side plates are parallel and fasten all screws tightly. Now we can tighten the pivot which we previously left finger tight. Next, take two plastic washers from the throttle bag along with two countersunk screws and fasten them as shown using the M6 square nuts. Mount the pedal face next as shown. The vertical position of the pedal faces is undefined. Run the wires through the load cell carefully. Do not pull or twist these wires hard. and slide the load cell in the assembly, this time with the wire side up. Next, insert the stud bolt into the throttle lever like so. Slide on the large spring, followed by this insert. The spring sits inside the recess of the insert. Now screw in the self-locking M6 nut till about 10 mm of the bolt is exposed. Screw on the thin M6 nut and screw the bolt into the ball joint. Secure the ball joint using the method explained during the brake assembly. Now carefully align the spring with the insert in front and the recess in the throttle lever. Press against the spring and slide the throttle lever into the assembly like so. It should snap into place. The bottom recess of the throttle lever should sit against the standoff in the bottom, and the protrusion in the load cell should be aligned with this hole. Now move the pedal arm to check if the spring sits correctly. Before adding any preload, please refer to the configuration and setup guidelines on the setup page on our website. Finally, install the electronics board using the M3 screws and plastic spacers as shown. To mount the pedals, we have provided the following hardware. 4 22mm bolts that you will find with throttle and brake fasteners, 2 thin steel washers, 4 remaining black plastic washers, and 3 thick steel washers from the elastomers bag. We are using a simple aluminum profile frame for this mounting demonstration. On the brake pedal, we loosen these 4 screws so the hexagonal standoffs can move freely. We slide a bolt with the thick steel washer in between the standoffs and fasten down. Make sure that the top faces of the hex nuts sit flat. For the rear, place 2 of the black washers underneath the mounting plate and then fasten using a normal washer. Now tighten the 4 screws to secure the hexagonal standoffs in position. For the throttle, we repeat the process as we did for the brake, but there is no need to loosen the front ports. The electronics board has 2 spring terminals to connect the load cells, top for the brake and bottom for the throttle. The wire colors are indicated on the silk screen. To connect the wires correctly, insert the exposed part of the wire in the hole. When you feel a resistance on the wire, pull the orange lever and insert the wire a few millimeters. Then release the lever. Give it a slight tug to check if it's secure. If we insert the wire too much, the clamp will press against the insulation and we have no electrical contact. When the pedals are mounted, we can also use a small tool to push the lever, which makes the process easier. We repeat for all 6 wires before connecting the board to the PC via USB.